Hey guys, I want to share my FRD settings. I guess I'll start off with the ride height. The front ride height is 6 millimeters. The front camber is -8. And I have -1 toe out in the front. For the shocks, I'm using the blue spring from Eagle Racing. They are the hardest. And on the bottom's connected at the second hole from the inside, and the top is the third hole from the inside. The oil I'm using is 500, otherwise known as 35 weight oil. This is the KPI I'm using. I'm not sure how much that is. Some say it might be about 6 degrees. The top is on the inside hole and the bottom is on the outside hole. So it kind of gives it a slant like this. I went ahead and made the front track wider. I installed a 4 millimeter spacer inside of the Y-arm. You take out the suspension shaft and you use a 2.5 that runs inside of the Y-arm, and you unscrew it holding this point right here, and you sandwich this inside of there and reattach it. I went ahead and got some stealth mounts from Eagle Racing. For the front, I opted to use this position because all my bodies have the Velcro there, and it actually fits better with my bodies than installing something up here. Didn't really work too well with my stealth mounts, so you do have to purchase some body posts from their site. You can buy it either from the TA05 or from the R31. I installed the smallest steering stopper in there. The motor I'm using, which I purchased from Eagle Racing, is the Novak 8.5 ballistic. Normally it comes with this sleeve, but I found the blue one, so I threw it on there. That's also available on Eagle Racing. Here is my 1 degree toe out on the front. And here is full lock right and full lock left. I have pretty parallel steering in the front. I have the lower control arm moved all the way to the forward position, and my upper control arm right here, I have 4 spacers on the front and 1 on the rear right there. Now, I'm not exactly sure how to measure properly the caster angle, but here's what I do. I use my camber gauge right here, and I just check from the lower control arm to the upper control arm on the turnbuckles, and what I get is -17. For the steering rack position, I'm using the back 2 holes right here. For my front droop, I actually allow my front to rise up to 12 millimeters. Normally the car sits at 6 millimeters. I like a lot of shock movement. I'll tell you in a second how I got my shocks to reach up to that level. Also, I got some really good information for these shocks, how to make them really awesome, because people say you have to replace them with TRFs or any other name brand shocks, but I'll get to that in a second. In the rear, we've got right here the green spring, which is the medium one. When I tried using the red spring in the rear, it was actually a little bit too soft. These springs are a little bit different from the other models. They are actually shorter. I've got the shocks connected to the first hole on the inside and the second hole on the lower control arm. I've got the weight tray on the rear, and until Eagle Racing comes out with more weights they can put on top, I'm just going to go ahead and leave these here. It's pretty much an additional 30 grams on the rear. Okay, in case you don't know what these are used to adjust the toe. Basically plastic inserts, and some of them have off-center holes. You take off your wheel and you get to this guy right here. You take off the bottom pin and you'll find the inserts inside of there. Pretty much you'll take the off-center one, put it on the front over here, and put it back together. And just double check, look at your chassis from up front, make sure you have about positive 1 degree toe in. The rear camber is -4. The rear droop is 12 millimeters, so this raises up pretty high. And normally the rear ride height is sitting at 5. The rear shock oil I'm currently using is 150 CS or 15 weight. In order to make the shocks work perfectly, this is what you need. Stop it right here, write this down, look them up on eBay or go to your local hobby store. You'll find them in the bits and bobs section, I guess like in the airplane section. They're 440 nylon flat washers. And I'll show you how to put them in just a minute. Okay guys, if you were like me and you wanted the brake discs, basically you get the R31 brake discs. They fit perfectly on here because it's pretty much the R31 suspension. But you might have found that as soon as you put everything back on, that all your bearings, all your wheels are super tight, they're not spinning freely. Well, here is what you have to do. You don't spend any money. This little guy right here. What I found, which they had not done on other chassis, they actually use this to shim the spindle and the bearing in the back here. You have to take off the tire, take off your brake disc, out the pin, take out your hub, and pull the spindle out. Pull this out, and you're going to find this inside of there, right inside there. So if you're using the brake discs, you may want to look into taking this out, put everything back together, and then your wheels will spin freely. And if you want some more adjustability on your shocks, because I found that some of these are too close and are in need of a spacer, so you don't bump this part of the shock against the shock tower, head over to BroadTech. You're going to find these types of spacers in almost any size. You can get them as small as like 0.5 all the way to 0.4, and you get them in blue, black, or silver. The servo that I'm using is the S8 from Eagle Racing. It's very fast. It's a 0.08 for like 30 bucks or so. And I've got a Kinetic ESC. You can find it for about 120 or so, and it comes with a Z-Zone D-Spec motor. You can get that in 8.5, 10.5, 13. Any of those would be really good. And those, like I said, it's for like 120 bucks, so it's pretty cheap. Got the gyro back here. It's by Eagle Racing, and I have it set about to 60 or so %. And this is how you get the shocks to be super awesome. Here are your front shocks, and off comes the springs and the perches. And using some needle nose dikes, don't scratch the shaft, but hold it tight at the bottom, and unscrew the bottom ball cup. With this part off, you're going to be using your Dubro flat washer, your 2mm nylon washer. Have one right here. This is going to replace the bottom O-ring that's inside of here. When you unscrew this cap, there will be 2 rubber O-rings. Take out the bottom one and place it with this one. Put everything back together. And this is how I got more throw, or I guess more suspension stroke. I screwed it back on, leaving a lot of thread available, and I actually fit 13mm in between. Get over here, right there. Don't worry, when the shock compresses, it doesn't really make it to the thread, so don't worry about that one. Now the second half of making these shocks awesome. You want to go ahead and unscrew your front bumper plate. Okay, I got my bumper plate removed. Look at my foam bumper. Take this guy out. And make sure you have a mustache. But seriously, there is a reason for doing this. Inside here, you'll see a foam piece that you can pop out. Now, with these popped out, take a little foamy, cut both of them in half. Now make sure you cut them all in half equally and perfectly. If not, your chassis will blow up and catch on fire. Not really, just make them precise as possible so that your dampening is equal all the way around. Now put your bumper back on. Now you'll be placing one of these inside each shock. Now you place your little foamy, your little squish, some pre-squishes right there. Place it on top, nice and evenly, and then put your shock cap back on. And with everything back in place, you notice that your shock is butter. Absolutely butter. Nice and smooth. Very nice. So do this on the other side as well and make sure it's absolutely smooth and both of them return at equal speeds. If not, redo one of them, make sure that they're equal. And you guys remember the O-rings we took out from the bottom cap? Now you go ahead and you place them in your pocket, and later on you have some rubber chews you can eat. No, really, don't do that. They're gross. Don't do that. That's probably very, very unsafe. You might die. Now, to set the ride height, I'd recommend using a flat surface, or if you don't have a flat surface, grab one of these from Eagle Racing. It is a setup station. Now for starters, I would suggest going ahead and making sure that all your preloads are equal all the way around, just by sight, and then we'll go ahead and we'll check what the ride height is and then make adjustments after that. So what I'll do here is I'll just give this a slight pop, and then I'll check right underneath the load control arm and see what my ride height is. So you will test, recheck, retest, meaning you give it a little pop, check it, adjust, and you'll do it a few times until you got the 6mm goal that I'm trying to attain. Now on the back, I'll do the same thing. I'll give it a pop, check it, check my ride height, adjust my preloads until both rears are equaling 5.5. Then I'll check the front, make sure everything is 6, and once everything is in balance, as long as your camber is all set and your toe is good, and finally it's time to check your droop. So we know that the rear is sitting at about, let me give this a pop, sitting at 5. I'm going to go ahead and raise the suspension until I get to 12. Now I have the rear ride sitting on 12, the rear left side. I'm going to go in here with my droop screw, and I'm going to adjust it until the wheel is perfectly planted on the surface. I'll do this on both sides, and then what I'll do is I'll take the screwdriver out, take out my ride height gauge, face it this way, and I will ensure that both wheels are touching the ground at the same time. And we'll do the same thing on the front. My ride height is 6. I'm going to go ahead and raise this up, and I will adjust my droop screw until the tire is sitting evenly on the surface at 12mm. Do that to both sides, and then check from the front, ensuring that both wheels touch the ground at the same time. Also, I highly suggest when you're doing your camber, use your ride height gauge underneath, set it at the ride height that you want, and then do the camber. Also, to account for bump steer, I included a 3mm spacer on the knuckle right there, and I included another, this one is a 4mm spacer right there. That helps give better leverage to the steering rack, so it has enough strength to pull left and right in both directions. And that's pretty much it. That is the Eagle Racing TT02 FRD with a Bluest Star for You setting. I hope you guys give it a try. You might find that you may really like it, and I hope you guys have a lot of fun.